All right, we're live and running. So thanks everybody for coming out for our second Toastmasters Lincoln Park video chat. These are designed to be informal gatherings in between meetings once a month to just give us the opportunity to talk about something related to our public speaking. I've kind of produced the content for the first two, but I'm hoping as we go down the road, other members of the club are going to get involved and step in and maybe take the lead on a couple of sessions. And it's just something that I want to do as a group to share and grow together since we only get to see each other twice a month. Tonight's topic is going to be content creation, otherwise known as speech writing. This is designed to be about a 1 hour session. If it runs a little bit over that, it won't be much more than 5 or 10 minutes. I always create a hard ending time on anything I do so people don't have to sit there wondering if I'm ever going to shut up and whether or not they can have to log off and like just walk out in the middle. So that won't happen. I promise you we'll be done by 8:40 at the latest. My suspicion is we'll be done before that. Before I go into details though and just kind of take the stage entirely and talk about content creation for 5 or 10 minutes, I like to get everybody into the call officially and welcome people into the circle. So what we do in the men's circles and the other circles I do is we do rounds a couple times in each call. Let everybody come in and say something. And for the first set of rounds tonight, what I'm going to do is I'm going to unmute you. Just, introduce yourself to the group. Tell us how long you've been in Toastmasters. And then tell us what one of your hang-ups is about writing speeches. So is it actually sitting and writing it? Is it creating an outline? Is it whatever? Or if you're one of those people that magically creates content all the time, tell us what your secret is, because we want to know what that is too. So I'm going to start up in this corner and unmute Emily. Say hello to the group and tell us a little bit about yourself, Emily.
I hate that you started with me,
I
but
I'll with you first, and I did it on purpose. Nah.
I'm sure you did. Okay. So hello, everybody. The reason so I've been involved with Toastmasters for about 2 years now. I think 2 or 3. Do you remember? I don't know.
2.5.
Anyway, okay, and I'm working on speech number 8. And I got to tell you, starting to write a speech kills me just from the get-go. I mean, it's coming. I have an idea, but I just don't know how to write it and know how to bring it out so that I can put it together. So I don't know if my brain is just too tired from working and whatever, but I don't know.
Not an uncommon problem. Well, thanks for joining us tonight. Hopefully we'll work out a few of those bugs. Meekin, say hello to the group and tell us something about yourself.
Hello, everybody. Please excuse my house. But anyway, I joined Toastmasters about 1.5 years ago, and my biggest problem is also kind of like Emily. I have an ideal, and I get ideals all the time. And my problem is trying to get enough content or narrowing it down to a specific topic, and then building on it. So getting the speech together where it's sound enough to do a whole presentation. Right
on. That's a good share. Thanks for jumping in and sharing that with us. I'm going to go down to the bottom of my screen anyways and talk to Becky. Hi, say hello to us and tell us about your speech writing experience.
So I can't remember when I started. I think it'll be 1 year in January.
I think so. I think you're right. Yeah.
It'll be 1 year in January. And what I do is I'm really good at putting too many things in a presentation.
Yeah, so, I've noticed that.
I do. That's what I do. So it's about getting it revised in a way that doesn't overwhelm somebody and put them into a state of confusion, but it actually educates and informs them.
Right on. So we've got 3 people on the board already and already 3 different issues. 1, can't get started. 2, can't pull it together. 3, has way too much and can't get rid of stuff because we're emotionally attached to it. So that's perfect. If I could have scripted a better opening to this call, it would have been exactly that. Thanks for sharing, Becky. Center square, Mr. Paul Lind. Oh, actually, that's Bruce Hooker. Never mind. Does anybody else old enough to get the Hollywood Squares reference other than Bruce and me and Meg, right? Bruce. Yeah. You're unmuted. Tell us about yourself and your speech. Tell us where you get caught up in speeches and creating speeches.
All right. I've been in Toastmasters. I guess it's coming on right around 8 years this October.
Yep.
So it was 2009 when I first came to Toastmasters, and we were meeting up in the old room. Meg will remember very well, the small room. And Jim, you've met up there several times too. I think my the big hang-ups I get, not only definitely cutting for time. I definitely think cutting for time is one of the things that's one of the toughest with speech writing. But for me, it's just getting that introduction down. And then sometimes I just need to learn to get the content down and then maybe go back and tweak the introduction. But sometimes I get hung up if I can't get the right intro. Yep. I don't want to write the rest of the speech. And I think a lot of times putting the content down and then writing your intro and conclusion afterwards probably would be best.
Well, that is perfect, and I love that because we're actually going to do a little exercise in this hour tonight about creating the perfect hook to start your speech from just one idea. So once again, the universe delivers magically, serendipitously, exactly what we need at the beginning of the call. Thanks for that, Bruce. All right, let's go over to Bethany. Say hello to the group and tell us about where you get hung up writing speeches, Bethany.
Hi, everyone. So first, this is going to be just exactly a year in September.
Happy anniversary.
So, yeah, that's exciting. I can't believe it's been a year already. And for me, the hardest part is coming up with just the initial idea. Once I have an idea of what I want to talk about, then I can sit down and write it all at once, and it's pretty easy for me. But it's getting that initial idea of something that I think people find interesting, A, and B, that meets the assignment for the particular speech.
Right, so it's that spark or that ignition of the idea is the bigger challenge for you, because when you've got that idea, you can lay it out pretty well. Yeah.
Correct.
Perfect. I love it. That's yet another different view of the whole thing. It's so interesting. Everybody's got a different approach, a different idea about where they get stuck, and that's so perfect. Meg, the ball is yours.
Hi, guys. So if I think of my time in Toastmasters, and I think of it in terms of years of school, I'm just about to graduate and go to college.
Yes, you are.
Years. It's a super long time, lots of chapters in there. And for me still, it's gotten easier, but the challenge is I have lots of ideas, narrowing it down to one, and then here's where I am with Becky in Becky's camp, taking the content and bringing it down to the time frame that I have. So narrowing the content and figuring out what's the most important thing. I'm a detail person, so it's tough to stand away and look at the forest versus looking at all the trees.
Absolutely. All right, perfect. So I think most of you know me. I'm Jim. I'm also on an anniversary. I think I'm almost 3 years to the day since my first meeting when I walked into the upstairs auditorium and saw Bruce Hooker win the humorous speaking contest 3 years ago, which he then went on to win all the way through division and district. So that's my anniversary. And I'm pretty comfortable creating content. Like, I'm always writing stuff down, and there's a lot of tools that I use that help me create content. I really, really enjoy writing speeches. So it comes easy to me because I put a lot of love and passion into it. For me, I guess the biggest thing is like, I have so many ideas, like oftentimes like a multitude of ideas that like sort of honing in on what best suits the project that I need to do, right? So like, although I have like at any point maybe 20 different speeches I could create in my mind in one day, they might not always address the thing that I need to be speaking about. So that's kind of like, because there's so many ideas, picking the right one out of the, as I call it, the toolbox, if you will, and using it at the right time. So we're gonna work on all those things today. So that's great. Thanks for sharing all of your personal shares. Before we go into a little bit about content creation and my experience with it, just go to this random rhetorical, like wave of hand questions. Anybody out there keep a journal? Anybody? Okay, perfect. Anybody out there have a blog that they write in? Okay, Becky, on and off, right. Anybody out there regularly use public transportation or cabs or Uber? Pretty much everybody. Okay. Anybody out there on Facebook? Probably everybody except for Meg. Okay. Anybody out there have a smartphone or own a smartphone? Can you even live in society today without a smartphone? Probably not. Okay. So if you answered yes to even one of those questions, I can guarantee you, you have an unlimited amount of content at your disposal, enough to do 10 speeches in the next year right now without even doing anything else to change anything. Why do you think most people think that why do you think most people doubt their ability to create a great speech and get hung up? Anybody have an answer to that? Wave your hand if you want to answer that. Anybody have an idea as to why people have doubt about writing a speech? All right, okay, Bethany, I love it. So what do you think the answer is, Bethany?
I think for me, it's a little bit being self-conscious that what ideas you have in your head and what you think is interesting in your life, you're afraid that everyone else won't find it interesting.
Perfect. Meg, do you have anything different than that or add to that?
I was thinking exactly what Bethany was.
Yep.
That it's not important enough. It's just my opinion. That kind of thing.
So here's the scoop. You both pretty much nailed exactly what I was thinking. Most people think that their lives are not interesting, period. I mean, I know I've been guilty of that for the majority of my life, but the fact of the matter is there's so much interesting stuff happening in your life all the time, and it's just the simple stuff that's interesting. Like, I'm reading a book right now, and it's the second time I've read it, but it's a book called Eat, Pray, Love. Has anybody read it? Elizabeth Gilbert's Eat, Pray, Love? Okay. It's magnificent and it's magical, and it's simply a story about the trips that she took after she got divorced. All she really did was take her relatively uninteresting life and tell people about what happened to her when she went on the trips and was learning how to struggle through a divorce, and it's a #1 New York Times bestseller. So like, just the routine stuff that happens in your life can be fabulously interesting to people. So how do you create more content and get more ideas if you're struggling for ideas? How do you hone in the ideas that are too big in your head? How do you tighten it up? Well, some of the lead-in questions I answered to you. If you don't have a blog, I strongly suggest that you start a blog, not for the purpose of being a blogger, but for the purpose of having a diary, if you will, that goes unpublished for your entire life, that's saved out there in the cloud that can never be lost. So when I started writing a blog 5 years ago, I thought I would never publish anything. Like I said, oh, I'm just going to write some stories about this trip to Paris because I haven't written anything for about 6 months to a year. And about halfway into the trip to Paris, I realized this is some pretty good stuff that I'm writing here. So I actually started publishing it. But I know people that I've encouraged to start writing a blog, and there's WordPress.com and Blogspot.com where you can get a free blog site, and you just go there once a week, twice a week, once a month, whatever, and you write something that happened in your life, and then you save it to draft. You may never publish any blog you ever write, but you'll always have a permanent record. And I've published in the last 5 years 350 blogs, but I guarantee you I've got almost 1,000 in my drafts. So my blog has basically become my diary, if you will, for keeping stories and ideas that whether or not I use them or not, you can always go back to it. So that's #1, start or activate a blog if you've got one already. #2, keep a journal. Like, get a paper journal, keep it next to your bed, even if it just starts with one time a week, writing down something that interesting happened in your life, at work, at home, because when you go back and look at that a month later or a week later, or when you're trying to create a speech, you might not get an entire speech, but I guarantee you'll get a piece of the speech that you need, which might be the story that's a part of the speech or the thing that happened to you. And if you've been in the club long enough, I think maybe Bruce and Meg are the only two that have been in the club long enough. I had an incident happen on the train that actually helped me create a speech that took me to the district level in the international speech contest. And it was just a chance encounter in a train. So these most interesting things happen in the most bizarre situations. That being said, third recommendation for creating content: when you're in an Uber or on a train or on a bus, do not use your phone. Your phone is a shield for you to actually see what's happening in the world. And if you look at other people on the train or in the buses, everybody's staring at their phone, or at least 80% of them. I promise you, if you just keep your phone in your pocket while you're using public transportation, you will get ideas for speeches and stories. Or if when you take an Uber or a cab drive, you talk to the driver instead of sitting back there in silence looking at your phone, you will get stories, you will get ideas, you will get speeches, and you'll get ideas for your speeches. So #3, don't use your phone when you're on public transportation or in Ubers. #4, post regularly on Facebook. If you have a Facebook account, just tell yourself your life is interesting. Now, I'm not saying that you have to become the social media queen or king of Chicago, but I'm just saying if you regularly put things on your social media, I can't tell you how many times I've gone back to a memory that comes up like a year or two later, and it's given me an idea about something that's changed dramatically in my life and set a platform. So I like something comes up from 7 years ago or even a year ago, and I'll be like, oh my God, I can't believe how much has shifted since that happened. And then that creates an idea in my head, which then sparks an idea for a story or a speech. And then number 5 of my 5 tips for how to create more content is to use your smartphone, of course, when you're not on the train, because I already told you not to do that. But everybody's smartphone has a little something on it called a voice memo recorder. Everybody know that? Everybody know their voice memo recorder, right? It is the most powerful thing you can do to save ideas. I literally record stuff when I think of it, 30 seconds to a minute. Then I send it to myself as an email with that little box in the bottom left-hand corner. And that way later that night when I check my email, I open it back up and listen to it again. And now it's planted a seed twice. I might not use it right away. I might not use it for 6 months or a year, but I guarantee you, because I've thought about it twice in 24 hours, it's going to stay in my toolbox, the toolbox that I was just talking about of ideas. And then when you have this toolbox, like I talk about this sort of master craftsman idea, when you're a master craftsman of a car, you don't have to look into your toolbox when you're grabbing your 3/8 inch wrench because you know exactly where it is, right? When you become a master craftsman of your words and your ideas, you can get into an impromptu speaking situation and you don't have to think about what you're going to say or which idea you're going to use in your speech. And this will play into what I'm going to talk about later in terms of not memorizing your speeches when you talk about the body of your speech. So basically those 5 tips, and I'll review them for you at the end of the call. They'll help you create stories in your mind, and then your stories drive your content. Whether you're doing an informational speech or a flashy storytelling speech, it doesn't matter. So why are stories so important, right? Well, these are 5 reasons why stories are important. Stories are memorable. When someone gives you an 8-minute speech, it's the 1-minute story they told in the middle that you're going to remember the most. Stories travel further than facts. All right. Anybody know what year or how far in the past it's hypothesized that the Great Flood happened? Anybody know off the top of their head? Right. No. Okay. Has anybody ever heard of the fact that there's a flood story somewhere in human history? Yes. Right. Okay. Do you know that that flood story appears in, at current record, over 29 different histories? There's a flood story in Mayan culture. There's a flood story in Assyrian culture. There's a flood story in the Bible. There's a flood story of Native American Indian culture. There's a flood story in the Easter Islands. There's a flood story in ancient China. Every culture has a flood story. So it's not the facts that are important. It's the details of the story that are important. So that's why stories travel further than facts. Stories are connectors. So when you allow yourself to share a piece of your world with someone, it makes them see something very important. It makes them see that you have the same thing going on in your life. You have the entire hero's journey unfolding. You have a challenge, you have a journey, you have awakenings, you're going to have mentors and teachers in your life, and all of those things are going to lead you to some sort of awakening. So that helps other people connect with you when you use the stories. Number 4, stories inspire action. People like to do things to change things when you tell them your story. So when you share your story, you can instantly see someone else get their wheels turning on their story. And that leads us to the 5th thing that's really important about stories, and that's that stories are contagious, right? Have you ever been around a family gathering or friends gathering and someone tells a great 1 or 2 minute story and instantaneously someone else wants to share theirs, right? We've all been there. It's just so fun. Stories go back to the beginning of human history. It was all the way back in 4000 BC that the oldest written record of a story is there. It's the Epic of Gilgamesh about the Sumerian king and his pursuit of wisdom. And so as far back as there is time recorded history, there is the evidence of story. And a story is nothing more than a well-prepared short speech. So that being said, there's 3 parts to every great speech. There's the hook, which is the beginning or the opening. And I call it the hook because to me, you've got like 15 to 30 seconds to really hook someone, and they'll decide in that 15 to 30 seconds whether or not they're going to listen to the rest of your speech. And I think most people professional speaking coaches and everybody else kind of agrees that that's the amount of time that you have. There's the body of your speech, which is about 90% of the time that you have. If you have 10 minutes, your body is about 8.5 to 9 minutes. And then the conclusion, which I sometimes call the bow, like putting a bow on everything, like a package. And it also can be called sometimes the call to action, or the main point of the speech at the very end of the speech. So I'm going to talk about the hook for just a second here, and then we're going to do an interactive exercise. So the hook is, to me, the most important part of the speech. Bruce referenced it in his sort of go around the rounds, where he said, you know, sometimes he can't create the rest of his speech if he doesn't have the great headline. Or he'll write the speech and then he wants to go back and change the headline, but he's too attached to what he already wrote and he can't let go of it. So what most people don't understand is there are some actionable techniques you can use to create a powerful start to your speech. And the number seems to be 5 today. So I've got 5 hook techniques to use to start your speech. Number 1, paint a picture in their minds. So when you take the stage, let's say you're going to talk about autumn, because it's autumn right now, and you want to talk about, and I think that's what I did at the start of the last Toastmasters meeting. You can take the stage and say something along the lines of like, my favorite season is autumn, blah, 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 blah. Or you could say, there's that time of night just before dusk when the sound of the cicadas in August is so loud that you can't decide that it's deafening or absolutely silent. And that's the kind of day it was when I ... So like that's painting a picture in your audience's mind, and it's creating an interest pattern that they want to follow. So if Tim Wilson were here tonight with us, he would say number 2, which is use the you. So that's your second technique. And it's, the way I look at it is I call it create a challenge by asking a question. So it's one thing to just get on stage and say, anybody here ever been to a rodeo? And that's fine. And it works because you're engaging your audience. But if you can create a challenge with the question that you're about to ask, there's a much greater possibility that you're going to engage your audience at the beginning of your speech. So if we do that same thing, anybody ever been to a rodeo? What would I do? What would I do? What would I do? So if you walked into a bar and you saw a mechanical bull in the middle of the bar, would you have the courage to get up and sit on that bull or not? Or how many drinks would it take you before you'd sit on that bull? ... Take a few answers. Well, let me tell you a little bit about, and that's sort of a different angle on the same rodeo speech that you're about to do. Start in an unusual situation, number 3. So if I start a speech and I say, never in a million years would I have believed that my friend Craig and I would have been riding a circus elephant down the middle of the street in Grand Central Station on New Year's Eve in New York City, I would have said there's not a chance in the world. And then I can go anywhere I want with it, but I guarantee you're listening to me because you've already thought about what in the world is that? What kind of situation is that? Number 4, begin at a moment of crisis. This is one of my favorite ones. Oh my God, James, it's Rhonda. I need you to come right away. I just got home from work. I found Richard in bed. He's face down. He's gray. He's not breathing. I think he might be dead. And then I proceed into the speech about my friend Richard or some part of my friend Richard and how his death affected my life. So you create a moment of crisis at the beginning of your speech, and then you let your story come from there. And then the last one is to plant a seed that will make them wonder. And this is a lovely word, like imagine. I think you hear a lot of people reference the word imagine when they're doing evaluations of speeches. I know Tim does it all the time and always gives kudos. So when you sit back and you plant a seed that's going to make your audience wonder, and you say something along the lines of like, imagine a world where everybody just got along. Imagine a place of peace where people didn't challenge each other over the color of their skin or the boundary of the land that they lived on or the faith that they had in the religion that they believed in. Imagine if, and then you can just go wherever you want with that, and then you say something like, well, I believe that that's happening right now, and let me tell you why. So like these are all 30-second examples, totally random, of ways to 1, paint a picture in their mind, 2, create a challenge by asking a question, 3, start in an unusual situation, 4, begin in a moment of crisis, and 5, plant a seed that will make them wonder. So now it's your turn. I'm going to give everybody 3 or 4 minutes to just sit back and relax and think about a speech idea that they have in their mind. And then I want you to create a 15 to 30 second hook using any of those techniques that we outlined. And then we're going to go around and we're going to share. And it doesn't matter if it's polished or unpolished. This is a workshop, not, we're not here to evaluate each other well, we're going to evaluate each other and give each other constructive criticism, but just let it fly. So I'm going to give 3 minutes on my timer here, and then we're going to go around and share. So remember, think of a speech idea you have or a speech you've already done that you didn't like the opening for, if you can't create a new idea in your brain right now, and think about how you could level up an opener on a speech that you're either working on or have done. We've lost Emily. Hey, Tim. Hey, Tim, can you hear us? Tim, can you hear us? We've traded Emily for Tim. Tim, are you able to hear me?
Yep, gotcha.
Oh, perfect. So just to kind of catch you up on where we're at here, we've gone through some basic storytelling, or rather some speech writing, content creation ideas. We've all gone around the circle and shared a little bit about some of the things that we get hung up on when we're writing speeches. And then we've talked a little bit about how to start a speech and understanding some techniques that you can use to get a speech started. And so what we did, what they're working on right now is they're preparing for a little interactive exercise. And we gave 5 different tools you can use to start a speech. 1, paint a picture in their minds. 2, ask a challenging question. 3, start in an unusual situation. 4, begin in a moment of crisis. Or 5, plant a seed that makes them wonder. So now everybody's coming up with an idea for a speech that they've either done or they're working on. And we're going to go around and everybody's going to share a little 15 to 30 second hook to try to get everybody in the circle as interested as they possibly can to want to hear the rest of the speech. So that's where we're at right now. So now you're all caught up.
Great. Quick question, stupid question. Would you repeat that list again? I was zoning out.
Sure. So number 1, paint a picture in their minds.
Got it.
Number 2, create a challenge by asking a question, AKA use the you.
Okay.
Number 3, start in an unusual situation.
Okay.
Number 4, begin at a moment of crisis.
Okay.
Number 5, plant a seed that creates wonder.
Got it.
All right, so I'm going to remute you, and then what I do is I unmute people as I call on them, just so you know.
Cool.
All right, thanks for joining. All right, so we've had a couple of minutes to prepare now, and I'm going to be random again, so don't feel that you're being picked on if I call on you first. And we're all going to get a chance to share a 30-minute, oh my God, we'll be here all night, a 30-second intro on a speech, and you're going to try to tease us and make us want to hear the rest of it. And I'm starting with Meg.
Woo! Alrighty. So there I am. It's a moment I've wanted to happen forever, probably since I was a kid. I'm surrounded by gleaming countertops, a bunch of people in toques, professional chef's gear, clogs, and it's an afternoon, and in walks Charlie Trotter.
Great.
I'm a guest chef for a day at Charlie Trotter's restaurant. And it's a day that not only are they serving dinner, their regular meal on a weekday, but they're preparing to fly to Hawaii to do some special TV show with a bunch of other people. So the kitchen is manic.
Perfect. That's great. So you used a couple different techniques there. You used a picture. You created a picture in our mind. It's a slightly unusual situation. I'm already wondering a little bit. So you kind of had, you touched on all three of them. So that was great. Thanks for sharing your start to your story. Now I want to hear the rest of the speech. I'm going to go to Becky, the coach, next.
Okay. Imagine you're at the door of an exclusive club to see a private show, and your favorite rock star is about to play inside. It's dark, the line is long, you finally get up to the door, and the bouncer is a beast. He looks very muscular and very serious. He looks at your ID and freaks out. He tells you remind him of someone he knew in 4th grade and tells you to get out of the line and leave.
Wow. That's great. Again, really nice technique. You're painting a picture in our brains. It's an interesting situation. You use the word imagine, so there's a lot of really good pieces of that. And it's a great start. Great job. I want to hear the rest of that speech. Bruce is up next. Tease us with your 30-second intro.
Okay. The door made a creaking sound as the real estate agent opened the door. The old house had been abandoned for over 2 years. And all the windows were still boarded up. It was sunny outside, but none of the light could penetrate the house. The house was so dark, and it smelled so musty. This house, it was dirty, so abused. How on earth could I make this place my home?
Nice. I think that's great, and it's very current, probably, I would suspect. That's
an absolute real story, and actually looking at Meakin's background there, I'm getting ready to live that life, girl.
Yeah, I know. So again, seeing a lot of similarities here, creating a picture. It's an interesting situation. We're kind of wondering where he's going with it, and it'll be exciting to see where that's going to take us down the road. So who have I not done yet? I've not done Meakin, speaking of construction in the house. So you're up, Meakin.
Do you recognize this situation? Stop it. Come on now. Come on, I'm not playing. Quit it. Stop. Come on, I'm serious. Please stop. Have you ever been put in this same frustrating situation? Sweaty, sticky hands tickling you, making you so angry because every muscle in your body aches from laughing uncontrollably.
So I loved where you were going with that. I suspected that you were going to start talking about tickling because you were kind of acting it out and using body language. So you're definitely painting a picture in my mind. And you also incorporated, for the first person to incorporate, a challenging question out of the gate too, and that's a really nice way to do it, because it's not just that like, has anybody ever been to a rodeo start. It's like, do you ever, yes. So I think that's a great start. We're gonna go to Bethany next. You're up, Bethany.
I'm thousands of miles away from home, in a country I've never been to, in an unfamiliar area. There's sand as far as my eyes can see, and I'm driving down a road with road signs that I can't read. I looked up my directions ahead of time. I have no phone service, and I get to my turn, and it's blocked. What do I do next?
Good. So now you've left us wondering as you go into the body of your speech, which is expert and wonderful, and you've also created an image in our brain at the same time. That's fantastic. Great work. Emily, you're back with us or no? No, we've got a screen, but we don't have a voice. I'm going to come down here to Mr. Wilson. I know you joined us late, Tim, but are you there?
I'm here.
You got something you want to share with us? You got the start to a speech that you've created?
Yeah, I can make something up.
Do it.
All right. Have you ever been inside when suddenly all the lights went out? And you looked outside and you realized all the lights were out, not only in your house, not only where you are, but everywhere around you. It's blocked down the block as far as you can see. Have you ever wondered, what if this is permanent? What if these lights never go back on? Well, the fact of the matter is, because of the sophistication of hacking and the unstableness of the electrical grid, that day just may happen.
Great, perfect. So it's not a surprise that Tim is an expert in using the question at the beginning of the speech, but not just using it in that sort of like dull, sort of canned sort of way. Like I think you see it in almost every evaluation he does, where he starts his evaluation with a question, but he doesn't let it linger out there so long that like you lose focus on it. And you see he did sort of that masterful technique of compounding the question, right? So it's like it's the first layer, the second layer, and the third layer, and then he leaves us wondering before he goes into the body of the speech. So really, really well done. Thanks for sharing, Tim. Emily, you're back with us now. Did you have a chance to create a little opening that you'd want to share with us?
You know what? I only got to hear the 5 different ideas or the 5 different openings. So I didn't hear what the exercise is.
Okay, so what we were doing is we're going around and we're sort of giving everybody 30 seconds of the beginning of a speech, just completely off the cuff, of something that we're sort of thinking about in our brain right now. So I know a speech that you're working on. Do you have an idea of how you might start that speech?
Well, I just came up with a little bit of an idea, but who knows?
Well, give it a shot. Just you're among friends here.
Imagine not having. Okay, so imagine not having worked in the last 11 years, and now you decide to go back to work. What do you think? What do you think are going to be your concerns? What do you think are going to be your? I don't know.
But that's great. You're already there. You started with the question, or you gave us the imagine, which we've talked about already with other people in this call, and then you started into like making us wonder about what we might be facing. So you've created a situation, and I think if you kind of bring some of the picture painting technique in there, like maybe paint a picture of where you're at on that first day of work and how overwhelmed you feel, and then you bring the question in, you'll be right there. So you've already got the foundation, even though you didn't have 5 minutes to prepare like everybody else. So really good work. I'm glad that you took the minute to share with us. So that was fun. It's nice to see all these different starts to a speech, completely random and off the cuff. And now like there's all these speeches that I want to hear. So I can't wait till you actually craft these Toastmaster speeches and I get to hear what happens out of that little start. Sometimes you think about writing the headline first, and then you write the article later, and then sometimes you write the headline after the article. There's no right answer. So the second part of all speeches is the body. And so I was going to talk predominantly about the hook because I think that's the most important part, and in a 1 hour, we can only cover so many things. But I want to talk a little bit about the body too, because a number of people have asked questions in our Toastmasters group about whether or not you memorize, whether they ask me specifically, do you memorize your speeches? And my answer to that is yes and no, but mostly no. So the body of the speech is where you've got 90% of your material. That's where the majority of your content is going. And I think where a lot of people get hung up on creating great speeches or writing great speeches is they can't either figure out how to get that much content, or they have so much content they can't hone it down to something that's manageable. So what I learned from a really expert storyteller and a professional speaker that I know was this concept of mileposting. And it really saved me when I was just starting on this Toastmaster path 3 years ago, because it saved me the trouble of memorizing everything that I wanted to say. And this is what mileposting means, basically, in my sort of translation of it. For every 45 seconds to 1 minute of content you have for your speech, you should have 1 milepost. So when you're preparing your speech, if you create a really good 30-second or less hook, and let's say it's a 7-minute speech, you create 6 or 7 mileposts, and then you create a call to action on the end or a conclusion, you've got your speech. And it doesn't matter what you say in between the opening and the conclusion, or as I call it, the hook and the bow, as long as you hit the majority of your mileposts. You don't even have to hit all your mileposts as long as you hit the majority of them. So let's say, for example, I want to write a speech about, I don't know, actually, why should it be me? Let's pick one of you randomly. We're going to pick you, Meg, because I like your Charlie Trotter story. So let's say you want to write this 7-minute Charlie Trotter story / speech, right? What's the message that you want to deliver in this speech? What's your call to action going to be?
Try it out before you buy it.
Okay, great. So trying out the cooking, or trying out the Charlie Trotter, or trying out what part of it?
Trying out what is it like to be a professional chef
Okay.
before you invest in school and in that whole lifestyle.
Okay, great. So let's say, for example, we take some of what you already had in your opening idea and we combine it with that call to action on the backside about try it before you buy it. Was there a point in your life where you wanted to potentially go to culinary school? And
Totally.
you did, obviously, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And how long ago was this experience you had with Charlie Trotter?
I'm going to say it was maybe 20 years ago.
Okay, so it's quite a while ago. It's kind of when he was in his heyday, right?
Oh, yeah, he was big time.
So what are some of the most significant pieces? Give me 3 or 4 significant pieces of the story of that night or that event.
The memorable pieces. Being given a bunch of little fruits on vines.
Right.
To take off to go into a dessert.
Okay.
Not a very glamorous job, and a very hard one. Also, being handed a pretty big chunk of, oh man, what is it called? It's not a truffle. It's a piece of meat. It's very, very fine. Oh my God, I can't remember. Anyway, by his sort of head chef, to say, here you go. Why don't you taste this?
Okay.
And then the third one was being asked by the one of the women who is, I can't remember some of these terms. So she was a pastry chef, and she asked me to make these tuile cookies, which are incredibly thin and very, very breakable. And you have to spread the dough, and then you bake it for just a very short time, and then you try to get it off the pan. And then the other memorable thing is Charlie Trotter asking me, how's my day going?
Okay.
And I don't remember if this is before or after I ate the incredibly hot pepper, which nearly burned my mouth and made me sick and made me want to run out the door.
Okay.
Anyway, those are some.
So these are all good. These are all good components. So
okay.
Now, if we're going to take the technique that we're talking about here, and this is obviously very rudimentary in this amount of time that we have to work with. Emily has gone insane, clearly, on my screen. I think she just froze up. But if we're going to take this very rudimentary sort of mileposting exercise, just for the sake of example, so you're going to start your speech. If your call to action is going to be try it before you buy it, right?
Yeah.
So you need to start somewhere in the first 30 seconds with what you already did, which we all heard, but also kind of introduce that idea. So one of the ways you could do that is, I imagine in any audience you're going to speak to, there's going to be people who are like either chefs at home or like to cook or whatever. So you can just come out of the gate if you want to. And even though you painted a picture really nicely, say, so who here fancies themselves to be a bit of a cook or a chef? Anybody? What's your favorite thing to cook? Boom. What's your favorite thing to cook? Boom. You're in. You've got the audience. Well, I for a long time thought that I wanted to be a chef. Until I had that experience and then you tell your little paint the picture scene. Now your mileposts are 1, the question, 2, paint the picture, 3, the little fruits, 4, the hot pepper, 5, the head chef asking you to make the cookies without breaking them, 6, Charlie Trotter actually speaking to you, and then whatever 7 is. And now you see how this is all falling into place. Now you don't need to actually remember a 7-minute speech. You need to remember your opening. You need to remember 6 maybe keywords or phrases, and then how you're going to wrap it up, because at the end you're going to go, so at the end of all this, I had an amazing day. I got to spend an entire day with Charlie Trotter in his heyday, but more importantly, what I really learned is it pays to try it before you buy it, because that saved me about $50,000, and whatever you want to do with that afterwards. So that's how you can take this idea of mileposting the body of your speech And not only is it effective because you don't have to memorize stuff, but it's also effective because you never sound forced. Who was at the contest last night? It was Bethany and Meekin, right? All right, so I'm going to unmute you two for just a second. So it was just two speakers. It was Chuck, our club member, who won, and Ranjit was the other guy's name. Did you agree with the result, Meekin and Bethany? Did you think it was pretty close, I guess, right?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So did you, I mean, obviously I was rooting for Chuck, but like you could have gone either way, right? I guess is the point I'm trying to make.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think Chuck beat Ranjit?
He seemed more organized in his thoughts.
He seemed more organized in his thoughts.
He was
Correct.
flowing. Mm-hmm.
He was flowing. Anything you want to add to that, Bethany?
I think he just kind of had a more natural, relatable story, kind of.
Yep. So for those of you who weren't there, Ranjit, who's part of Lightly Toasted Toastmasters, told this fabulous story about how he was growing up, and he painted the picture. You know, when I was growing, and he's Indian. He's like, when I was growing up and all the kids were playing cowboys and Indian, I always had to play Gandhi because that's what they made me play. I mean, it was hilarious. Like, and then he went into this long story about how he was, PhD in accounting because his father wanted to be PhD in accounting, and blah 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 blah, and how he quit that to become a comedian, and he went to comedy school and improv. It was a fabulous story. But Chuck's was better because he flowed more, as Meekin just said, and because it was a more natural flowing story, as Bethany just said. And I could see Ranjit, who was a brilliant comedian and a very good speaker, I could see the lines of the speech rolling in the backs of his eyeballs as he was giving it. And he memorized it very, very well, but it still felt, would you say maybe it just felt a little forced, Bethany or Meekin? Yeah, exactly. So when you milepost, you no longer look forced because you never know exactly what you're going to say. And the fact of the matter is, as a speaker, it's really, really liberating to not be handcuffed to your script, right? Because you then have more confidence, and even if you miss a milepost, you're still going to wind up at the end somehow. And then that's going to lead us to the end or the conclusion. So the conclusion, which I call the bow, or putting a bow on it, is your call to action. Any speech without a call to action is kind of a failure in some ways, in my mind, because it doesn't motivate your audience to take any action in their life. And Tim, who's a professional coach and knows speaking for years and years and years, is nodding his head. And I know he talks about that all the time. We had a really good target speaker last night, right? Bethany and Miley, like the guy, brand new Toastmaster, only 2 months. It's a great, great story about the music industry and Prince. But at the end, he really didn't challenge us at all, right? There was no challenge on that speech. So it just kind of died at the end and it was flat. And while he did a great job, there was just that missing piece. So the most important part of your conclusion is that it can never be rushed. If you have 15 to 30 seconds memorized, that is your call to action. And I do recommend that you memorize your opening and your call to action. But if you have 15 to 30 seconds memorized, that is your call to action. Don't ever sacrifice it because of time, ever. If you need to trim one of your latter mileposts off and we don't get to the hot pepper, in Meg's case, if we don't get to the hot pepper, does it matter? Because we don't know that you ate a hot pepper, and we don't know that you wanted to spit and throw up in Charlie Trotter's face. And while that's funny and it would be a good part of your speech, we don't have to know that to get the speech. What we need to get at the speech is the fact that, the try it before you buy it thing that you introduced at the beginning. So when necessary, you can trim a milepost off the back of your speech to make sure that you get your call to action in. And so that being said, that is the 3 parts of the speech that we're talking about. So we've got just a few minutes here, and I kind of want to tidy this down because I don't want to run this over by more than 5 minutes or so. But what I'd love to do is I'd love for you to think about what you just said at the beginning of the speech, or when you gave us your sort of test opening. And I want you to think about what your call to action is on that speech. And I want you to give us a 15-second how you would state your call to action at the back of the speech. And if you can't write the speech call closing right now, that's okay. Just tell us what the call to action is and why it's important to you. So let's take 2 minutes And then when we go around the circle, we'll just get 15 to 30 seconds each to wrap it up, and then we'll call it a night. All right, so before we go around the circle, and I'll randomize the order again, Tim typed in a really good question to me while I was talking about the body of the speech, and I want to address it right now. But he asked me if I could define a little bit more what a milepost is. So for those of you, some of you may already assume and know, but like, you know, when you're on that trip to grandma's house that's like 5 states away, and you're asking, are we there yet? Are we there yet? And you're watching like the states, it's like milepost 97, milepost 98, milepost 99, milepost 100. So when I refer to the term mileposting, it's basically like if I've got a 7-mile speech or a 7-minute speech, when I got to mile 5, I get to mile 6, and then I'll know when that yellow card comes up, if I'm on a 7-minute speech, I'm at 6 minutes. I better be at my 6-mile post, or I'm running short on time. So that's just kind of like, I use that term milepost so regularly that sometimes I forget that it might not always make sense to people. But thank you for asking that question, Tim, so I could define that a little bit better. So we're going to go random around the clock again, and you're going to give us either your call to action for the speech with a little closing idea, or just your call to action, why it's important to you. And I'm going to start with the man in the tank top, Bruce Hooker.
Make something beautiful again.
Make something beautiful again. That's perfect, yeah. And you will. All right, let's go to Bethany.
I challenge you to be confident, be brave, and not let your fear prevent you from going out the next adventure.
So we kind of lost your audio. Did anybody else kind of lose their audio a little bit? Yeah, you were cutting in and out a little bit. Can I ask you to repeat it and see if it works better?
I challenge you to be confident, be brave, and not let your fears prevent you from going on the next adventure.
Perfect. I love it. And I did get it more clearly that time. Awesome. Meg, you're up.
So if you're dreaming about a job or a lifestyle, get out of your head and into that world by either shadowing someone or doing an internship before you dive into the deep end of the pool.
Perfect. Excellent. Really good. Becky, you're up next.
I'm still a little long here. Take note, recognize when you're reacting, and optimize that space between what somebody says to you and what you do next. And you'll be a leader who responds and a leader who is loved.
Absolutely. That's great. And that really ties in with, I know, a lot of the work that you're doing on these other techniques, so I can actually see that. I can almost see it completely, even though I haven't seen the speech yet, which is great. All right. Who have I? Meekin. I haven't gotten to you. Oh, hey. Oh, I just kicked Meekin off. All right. Hang on. I just unaudioed her, or I just kicked her off the video. So I'm welcoming her back now. Welcome back, Meekin. There you go. All right. Now I'm going to unmute you. Go.
Thank you. So if you're ready to take control of your life, practice 3 techniques and you can control the effects of tickling.
Perfect. I love it. So that ties right back into what you were talking about. And it plays into that control thing, right? Like that fear of being out of control in general. So this could be a really good motivational speech based on tickling, which is fantastic. I love it. Emily, do you have something for us?
If your job was like everything else in life, has its ups and downs, I need to get fear in there. So no, I don't have the call to action, but it's.
Well, just tell us in words, like, tell us in words without even the speech. What is your call to action in this speech? What are you challenging us to do?
Overcoming fear.
Overcoming fear, great.
MS is in there.
Yep.
Huh. Surprise, surprise. Feeling valued of where we're at in regards to your work situation.
And I'm also, I think you kind of hinted at this at the beginning, I'm getting a little bit of that sort of like just a reminder to people, because sometimes a call to action can be a reminder to people how things already are, right? So like sometimes we're always thinking we got to change things to make life better. Sometimes the way it already is already better. We just forget that it's better. So and I think I heard you say this, something along the lines of like, sometimes a day at work is just like anything else in our lives. There's good days and there's bad days, right? And I think that that's what you were hinting at. And that's kind of like a call to action from a side door where you're saying like, don't sweat the small stuff, right? She's frozen again. She's nodding her head. That means I'm right.
Yeah.
All right. So Tim, we've got you on the board now next. What's your call to action or closing or both?
So start stockpiling your 6 months of food now, because that next blackout may be permanent.
There's this whole Armageddon sense in the whole speech, Tim.
I was kind of boxed in for the way I started, so I just went with it.
Hey, but you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. Being boxed in that situation could be really cool, because it is sort of a realistic situation. I would say probably less than 95 or less than 5% of the people in the United States actually have a disaster plan for like complete power failure. They're all going to be doing this like, oh my God, what am I supposed to do? I got to Google what I'm supposed to do. And there won't be no Google. So, well, that's great. So gang, thank you so much for coming out and sharing and participating in this second Toastmasters video jam session. It looks like the recording is working. So as long as I don't botch it on the save, I will gladly post it for us to watch on the Toastmasters website going forward. Again, for those of you who weren't there last night, just a reminder, Chuck Romero won the humorous speech contest for Area 66. And Jim Gavitt came in second runner-up on the evaluation contest. So congratulations to those guys. We will be having a meeting next Thursday. It will coincidentally be Bruce's last meeting, I think, before he moves to North Carolina. So please come out and share some time with Bruce at his last TMLP meeting until he comes back as a guest. Yes, Bruce. Hang on. I got to unmute you. Go ahead.
Yes, I just want to let everybody know that last night Mark Kendricks and I met with the Link Scholars again for our for the second time presenting public speaking skills to the high achieving, privileged high school students. But this is the first of 4 that will be taking place. So we're Amber was supposed to be with us last night, but she couldn't get childcare. But I know Brandy's doing it next time, and probably somebody else. We need to get some more females involved in this, and it's a great opportunity. So absolutely lots of fun.
Thanks for reminding us of that, Bruce, and we'll cover that again on Thursday night next week for the group. And then Brandy, who you just mentioned, has been moving, so she hasn't been able to be with us for a couple of meetings. She will be back this coming Thursday, which is great. I spoke to her earlier tonight, and she did ask me to remind those of you who are here, if you haven't done so already, to pay your dues by the end of the month. So Toastmasters has a new policy where you don't have any grace period. You actually get deactivated as a member if you don't pay your dues by the deadline, which is October 1st. So if you want to be on the website, give speeches, be a part of the club, hey, everybody that's here is, I know it. So I'm as guilty as anybody. I'm a last minute guy. So when I get off this call, I'm going to go pay my dues. So help us all out and pay your dues on time. And that's it. Anybody have any, I'm going to unmute everybody because I want to get everybody back into the call here. Anybody have anything they want to say to close things out?
It was super cool being in this space with all you guys.
Yeah, thanks. Becky, do you have something?
Yep. I would say for those that have trouble thinking of a topic or get nervous about it, there's a great quote, Jim, you might know this. Somebody that I just heard said, everyone know, maybe you also quoted this person, everyone knows something that you don't know. Mm-hmm. And so just remember that you have something to share that nobody else knows about. So
absolutely. 100% true. And I do love that quote. Yeah. Anybody else? Emily.
So I have a quick question.
Yes.
where do we go to pay our dues?
You can do it on the Toastmaster Toast website. Brandy, our amazing past president and treasurer, has created a link where you just click in and you can go pay your dues online, or you can bring a check to the meeting, old school style, and hand it to Brandy.
Okay, thanks.
The one thing that you should not do is give it to Jim. That's the last thing anybody should ever do, is give anything to Jim, because Jim will not get it to the place it's supposed to be.
Good to know.
Thanks everybody for coming out. It's so good to have you all in my life, and I'll see you a week from tonight at the meeting. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Jim.
Bye, everybody. Nice seeing you all.
Yeah.
You too.
Good night, John Boy. Good night. Everybody over 50.
Bye, Ned. Bye, Bethany.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Bruce.
We've had